So when you say global cataclysm, what does that mean? Means that something hit the planet, we were wiped out?
Yeah, there are a number of options, and again, I need to stress this because there's so much propaganda in this business, I'll be immediately accused of lunatic fringe. The solid science that's been done on this is twofold. One aspect of it, the one that I find most persuasive, is called the Younger Dryas impact hypothesis. And this is a mainstream hypothesis, but it is severely criticized within academia. The hypothesis is that about 20,000 years ago, a very large comet came in from deep space and went into orbit around the sun. This would be a comet of the diameter of 100 kilometers, maybe 200. Comes in, gets captured by the sun's gravity, goes into an orbit. That orbit crosses the orbit of the Earth. While you're dealing with one large object, the chances of getting hit are extremely low. It would be very bad if you did, but very low. Trouble is, nobody disputes this. Once comets are caught by the gravitational field of a very large planet or of a sun, they start to break up into multiple parts, and this is what happened to the Younger Dryas comet. Instead of being a single bullet, it became a shotgun blast. It became thousands and thousands of objects, of which we've catalogued quite a lot. Numbers of them. Comet Encke is the best known bit of that former comet. Many of the academics who look at this think that Comet Encke, which is about 6 kilometers in diameter and which does cross the orbit of the Earth, they think that that was the source comet. But whereas the other team are saying, no, that's a bit of the source comet. There were many other bits as well. And 12,800 years ago, 12,860 approximately, the Earth went into a storm of these fragments. None of them big enough to compare with the object that wiped out the dinosaurs 65 million years ago. But all over the world, the Earth is turning, this stuff comes in. They found it in the west coast of North America, they found it in Belgium, and they found it as far east as Syria. So it's like the Earth turns and this stuff is just coming in. Most of it is blowing up in the air. It isn't even hitting the ground, but an airburst from an object that might be 100 meters in diameter is equivalent to a very substantial nuclear blast. So their argument is the Earth was hit by a comet storm. And this, they then argue, and I think they're right, explains what happened then. Because 12,800 years ago, we were still in the Ice Age, but the Earth was coming out of the Ice Age. In fact, for about 1,000, maybe 2,000 years before that, the Earth had been getting warmer, getting quite nice. And you would normally expect that to continue. But then suddenly, 12,800 years ago, give or take 60 years, there's a huge interruption. There's a radical change. The Earth, instead of warming, it suddenly goes back into a massive deep freeze. And this is the time when all the famous big animals of the Ice Age, the megafauna, are wiped out. The woolly mammoths, the mastodons, the giant sloths, these things like 14 feet tall, you know, they're all wiped out in that window around about 12,800 years ago. And most important of all, there's a very mysterious sea level rise that occurs then. This you would not expect when the Earth is entering a cold phase. Normally when the Earth enters a cold phase, ice accumulates on the existing ice caps. It doesn't melt and go into the sea. So the next thing is, how do we explain this sudden rise in sea levels at the beginning of Younger Dryas? It shouldn't have happened. The comet theory explains it perfectly. The mass, the impact, the heat, the air bursts, that would have been enough to send the ice sheets into meltdown and to cause this pulse of meltwater. Then the freeze sets in. You have about 1,200 years of freezing, desperately cold conditions. And then again, 11,600 years ago, whoomph, it suddenly warms up. I mean, these are radical climate changes. They're beyond anything that's happening now. And I think explanations are needed for them. And because 12,800 years ago may sound a long time ago, but it's really yesterday in the human story. So something very big happened to the Earth and happened to our ancestors 12,800 years ago. If it wasn't a comet, another theory that's been put forward is a radical change in solar activity. This might have been involved with it as well. I don't find that as persuasive as the Younger Dryas impact hypothesis. And, you know, maybe some other explanation will come up, but what nobody disputes is that the Younger Dryas was a catastrophe, it was global, and it had huge effects.
Satu kutipan bisa mengubah harimu. Klik subscribe buat bareng-bareng belajar setiap hari.